25,000 miles per hour. That is not just a number. It is a speed so fast that air stops acting like gas and starts acting like a solid wall. If you hit it at the wrong angle, you don't just crash, you vanish. On the evening of April 10th, 2026, just 3 days ago, 4 human beings were strapped inside a tiny metal can, falling toward Earth at that exact speed. They were wrapped in a ball of fire that was hotter than the surface of the sun, and for 6 minutes, the rest of the world had to sit in total silence and wonder if they were still alive. But here is the really scary part. This wasn't just a normal trip home. NASA knew the shield protecting them was broken. Not maybe broken, not theoretically broken. They had tested it once before without people inside, and it came back with chunks missing. It had over 100 cracks and fractures. It was literally falling apart in space. And NASA strapped 4 people to it anyway. Let's pause here because I want you to understand the full picture. This isn't just a story about space travel. This is a story about a gamble, a bet made with human lives on the line. They called their capsule Integrity. By the time they hit the atmosphere, that name was either a badge of honor or a very dark joke. To understand why those 6 minutes were the most dangerous moments any astronaut has faced in 50 years, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to look at the flaw that everyone saw coming, but no one could stop.
A heat shield is supposed to die so the astronauts can live. It's made of a special material called avcot. Think of it like a giant 16-foot wide candle. When the spacecraft hits the atmosphere, the shield is designed to burn away. It's called ablation. As the outer layer chars and melts, it carries the heat away from the cabin. It's a controlled, predictable burn, layer by layer. But back in December 2022, NASA sent up Artemis I. It was a test run, no people, just the ship. It went to the moon, took some pretty pictures, and came home. On the outside, it looked like a total success. Then they flipped the ship over. The engineers didn't see a smooth, even burn. They saw a horror movie. Pieces of the shield hadn't just melted, they had exploded off. There were holes. Huge chunks were missing. The shield looked like it had been attacked by a giant animal. NASA's own investigators said it looked like a trail of debris was following the ship through the sky. If there had been people inside, they might have survived. Key word, might. For 2 years, the smartest people on the planet poked and prodded that shield. They used lasers, they used wind tunnels, they cut it into 200 pieces to find out why it failed. The answer was simple, and that's what made it so terrifying. The shield couldn't breathe. When the material gets hot, it creates gas. In a normal shield, that gas leaks out through tiny holes and floats away. But on Artemis I, the outer layer was too thick. It sealed itself shut. The gas got trapped inside, the pressure built up, and then pop. The shield literally grew blisters that exploded in the middle of a firestorm.
Now, here is where the story gets really tense. By the time NASA figured out the shield was a disaster, the shield for Artemis II was already built. It was already bolted onto the ship. To fix it would mean taking the whole thing apart. It would mean delaying the mission for years. It would cost billions of dollars. And, most importantly, it would mean admitting they were behind schedule. So, NASA made a choice. They decided to fly it as it was. But wait, it gets worse. The shield on Artemis II was actually denser than the one that failed on Artemis I. It was even less likely to breathe. To save the crew, NASA had to change the way the ship came home. Usually, the capsule does something called a skip reentry. It dips into the air, bounces back up to cool off, and then dives back in. But they realized the cooling off part was what killed the shield. When it cooled, it sealed. So they decided to go for a loft. Instead of skipping, they would just drive the ship straight into the fire. The plan was, come in fast, come in hot. Don't give the shield a single second to cool down. It was like trying to run through a burning building instead of walking through it. Not everyone thought this was a good idea. Charles Cosmera, a veteran astronaut who flew right after the Columbia disaster, went public. He said the chance of the ship breaking apart was 1 in 20. Think about that. If you were told your flight home today had a 1 in 20 chance of falling out of the sky, would you get on? NASA's own safety rules say the risk should be 1 in 500. Cosmera warned that NASA was making the same mistake they made with Challenger and Columbia. He said they were choosing a schedule over safety. He said they were ignoring the ghosts of the astronauts they had already lost. But NASA pushed back. They ran simulations. They said even if big blocks of the shield fell off, the metal frame of the ship would hold. They convinced the crew that the math was on their side. Commander Reed Wiseman sat in those meetings. He looked at the data. He looked at the engineers. And then he told his team, "We're going."
On April 1st, 2026, the fire started. The SLS rocket, the most powerful thing ever built, pushed them off the planet. Inside were 4 people: Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen. 3 Americans and 1 Canadian. For the first few days, it was a dream mission. They left Earth's orbit. They saw the world shrink until it was just a blue marble in the dark. They flew around the backside of the moon, going further into space than any human being in history. They saw things no one else has ever seen with their own eyes. They watched a solar eclipse from behind the moon. They saw the far side of the lunar surface, a place of jagged craters and gray dust that looks like it belongs in another dimension. And then there was the moment that made everyone watching at home cry. Reed Wiseman had lost his wife Carol to cancer 6 years ago. She was the one who told him never to give up on his dream of space. While they were floating 250,000 miles away from home, the crew named a small, bright crater after her, Crater Carol. For a week, they were heroes. They were explorers. They were the best of us. But every time they looked out the window at the stars, they knew what was waiting for them at the end of the line. The shield, the cracks, the fire. April 10th, 7:33 p.m. The crew said goodbye to their service module. That was the part of the ship that gave them air and power. Now they were just a tiny capsule, falling. They turned the ship so the heat shield was facing down. Everything now was about geometry. If they were off by just a little bit, they would either burn up instantly or skip off into deep space forever. At 7:53 p.m., they hit the entry interface. They were 400,000 feet up. The air was thin, but at 25,000 miles per hour, even thin air feels like a sledgehammer. Inside the cabin, the light changed. The windows didn't show the black of space anymore. They showed a flickering, angry orange, then pink, then a white so bright it hurt to look at. This was the plasma. The air around them was being crushed so hard it turned into a superheated gas that conducts electricity. It hit 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. If you put a block of steel outside the window, it would have turned into liquid in seconds. And then the radio went dead. This is the part they don't tell you in the movies. When a ship is surrounded by plasma, radio waves can't get through. It's like trying to talk through a solid lead wall. At Mission Control in Houston, the screens went blank. The heartbeat of the ship, the telemetry, just stopped. Houston, integrity, static.
And then nothing. For the people on the ground, it was a tense wait. For the 4 people inside the ship, it was a nightmare. Imagine being in a room that is vibrating so hard you can't read your own hands. You are being pushed into your seat by 4 times your own body weight. Your chest feels like an elephant is standing on it. You have to fight just to pull a single breath of air into your lungs. And you are totally, completely alone. No one can hear you scream. No one can see if the ship is falling apart. No one can tell you if you're going to make it. You are just 4 people in a burning box, trusting that a piece of glue and some charred plastic will hold back the sun. Victor Glover later called it the loneliest feeling in the world. Seconds feel like hours. You look out the window and you see chunks of glowing white material flying past. Is that the shield? Is the ship melting? You don't know. You can't know. NASA engineers had run worst-case scenarios where entire blocks of the shield fell off. They said the titanium frame would hold, but simulations are just numbers on a screen. Out here, in the middle of a 25,000-mile-per-hour fireball, the only thing that matters is reality.